I'm Detective James, and this is the cases the news forgot.
The first report didn't even sound strange. An office worker claimed the elevator stopped between floors. That happens. Anyone who's worked in a tall building has felt that stomach drop when the elevator hesitates. But this time, the doors opened. And what was outside wasn't a hallway, it was a wall. Smooth concrete. No doors, no lights. Just a narrow strip of yellow paint running horizontally at chest height, like a warning line. The worker stood there for maybe 3 seconds before the doors closed again. When the elevator continued, it skipped their floor entirely and dropped them in the basement. They didn't report it because they were scared. They reported it because when they checked the directory later, there was a floor listed that no one had ever noticed before. No name, just a number that shouldn't exist. I didn't take the case at first. Elevators malfunction, buildings get renovated, people misremember details under stress. But then the calls kept coming. Different companies, different cities, same story, same detail every time. The elevator would only stop on these floors if you were alone. I went to see the building myself. 34 floors. Glass exterior. Newly renovated. The kind of place that smells like cleaning chemicals and quiet panic. I rode the elevator up and down for nearly an hour. Nothing happened. Every stop normal. Every floor exactly where it should be. Then I noticed something small. Something you only see if you're already looking for trouble. The buttons didn't go straight from 12 to 14. There was a faint space between them. Not a button, just space. Like something had been removed and the panel wasn't designed to admit it. I waited until late, after most of the offices had emptied. Just me and the hum of the building settling into its nighttime rhythm. I stepped into the elevator again and pressed 17. The doors closed. The elevator moved. Then it slowed. Not stopped, slowed. The indicator flickered. The number 14 flashed, then disappeared entirely. No number replaced it. The doors opened. This time it wasn't a wall. It was a hallway. Narrow. Too narrow for a modern office building. The ceiling was low enough that I had to tilt my head slightly. The lights buzzed with that old fluorescent sound you don't hear anymore. The carpet was worn down the middle like people had been walking it for years, but there were no doors. Just numbers painted directly onto the walls. 14A, 14B, 14C. I didn't step out. The smell hit me first. Dust, old paper, something electrical, overheated. The kind of smell that makes your brain warn you before your logic catches up. The doors began to close on their own. I stuck my hand out to stop them. The hallway lights flickered when I did. That's when I realized the numbers weren't painted evenly. They were scratched in, carved, and some of them were crossed out. The doors shut anyway. When the elevator continued, it dropped me at 17 like nothing had happened. The indicator worked again. The hum returned to normal. Anyone watching the security feed would have seen nothing strange at all. I checked the building plans the next day. Original blueprints, renovation permits, fire escape diagrams. There were no sublevels, no hidden floors, no hallway between 14 and 15. But the maintenance logs told a different story. Every few years there was a note. Same wording, different handwriting. Elevator recalibrated after unscheduled stop. No explanation. No repair ticket attached. I interviewed a former night security guard. He laughed when I asked about the elevator, then stopped laughing halfway through. He told me about a time he heard voices through the emergency phone panel. Not calls, conversations. Multiple people talking softly, like they were trying not to be heard. He said the voices stopped the moment he answered. The last person I spoke to was a woman who used to work accounting on the 14th floor. She told me she once stepped out when the elevator opened by mistake. She thought it was a service corridor. She said the lights dimmed the moment she crossed the threshold. There were desks inside, old ones, no computers, just paperwork stacked everywhere. Names on folders that matched people currently working in the building. Some folders were thin, some were thick. Hers was already half full. She went back to the elevator. It didn't close right away, like it was waiting. She quit the next week. The building management denied everything, offered inspections, claimed sensor glitches. But here's the thing they couldn't explain. Since the building opened, no one had ever officially checked out on the 14th floor. Transfers, resignations, disappearances. The records showed people leaving the company, but not the building. The elevator still runs. People still ride it every day. Most will never notice the missing space between the buttons. Most will never ride alone late enough for it to matter. But sometimes, late at night, the indicator goes blank, and somewhere between floors, the doors open for someone who wasn't supposed to see what's still working down there. If this elevator ever stops where it shouldn't for you, don't step out, because the building doesn't forget who enters, and it doesn't always let them leave. The second time, I made sure I was alone. That detail matters more than you think. It was almost midnight, the kind of hour when office buildings feel hollow, like they're holding their breath. The security guard on the ground floor barely looked up as I crossed the lobby. The elevator doors waited open, silent and patient, the way they always are when they already know you're coming. I stepped inside. The panel glowed, 1 through 14. No missing numbers, no scratches, no sign anything was wrong. I pressed 7, just like before. The doors closed. We passed 2, 3, 4. Then the elevator slowed. It shouldn't have. The digital display flickered just for a second, and the number changed. No floor, just a blank dash. My stomach tightened. The elevator sank slightly, like it had missed its footing, then stopped. The doors slid open with a soft mechanical sigh. The hallway outside looked unfinished. Bare concrete walls, exposed wiring, no carpet, no exit signs, no emergency lighting, yet somehow I could see perfectly. The air smelled stale, like a room that had been sealed for decades and only just remembered how to breathe. This floor didn't exist on any blueprint. I didn't step out, not yet. I leaned forward and listened. At first, there was nothing. Then, very faint, footsteps, not approaching, not leaving, circling. I checked the elevator panel again. The buttons were different now. Some floors were missing. Others were doubled. 7 appeared twice. 12 blinked like it was struggling to stay lit. At the bottom, a new button pulsed slowly. No number, just a symbol I didn't recognize. I felt it then, the sensation you get when something knows you're watching it. The footsteps stopped. Something moved at the far end of the hallway. A shape slid past an opening where a door should have been. It was tall, wrong in proportion, like it had been stretched by a bad memory. The elevator doors began to close on their own. I hit 7 again. Nothing. I hit 1. Still nothing. The blank button pulsed faster. The doors stopped closing. I don't know why I did it. Maybe curiosity, maybe fear, maybe because the building had already decided this was happening. I pressed the blank button. The elevator lurched. The lights cut out completely. When they came back, the doors were open again, but this time, the hallway was different. Carpeted, clean. Office doors lined both sides, each with frosted glass and a brass nameplate. Every name was the same. J. Wild. My name. On every door. A phone rang somewhere down the hall. Slow, patient, like it would keep ringing forever. The elevator doors began closing again, faster this time. As they slid shut, I realized something that made my blood go cold. The floor indicator above the doors finally lit up. 0. There is no floor. 0 in this building. And I had the sudden, terrifying certainty that if those doors closed completely, the building wouldn't let me remember how I'd ever gotten out. The doors stopped with an inch to spare. Something pressed against them from the other side. And then, the elevator started moving again. Down. The descent felt longer than it should have. Not physically, emotionally, like every floor we passed took something with it. A memory, a sense of direction. The elevator didn't shake or rattle. It moved smoothly, confidently, like it had made this trip countless times before. The display stayed on 0. I tried to count the seconds, lost track at 12. When the doors opened again, I expected darkness. Instead, I was staring into a familiar space that immediately felt wrong. The lobby. Same marble floor, same reception desk, same security cameras in the corners, but the lighting was dimmer, warmer, like late afternoon, even though it was well past midnight. The digital clock behind the desk read 4:17, no AM or PM. There was someone standing at the desk. Not the guard I'd seen earlier. This man was older, thinner. His uniform looked outdated, like it belonged to a different decade. He didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, he smiled the way people do when they recognize you from somewhere they can't quite place. "Long ride?" he asked. I didn't answer. I stepped out of the elevator. The doors stayed open behind me. That's when I noticed the lobby doors. The glass reflected the inside of the building perfectly, but beyond the glass, there was nothing. No street, no city lights. Just a pale gray fog pressed flat against the windows, like the building had been wrapped in it. I turned back to the guard. "What floor is this?" I asked. He hesitated. Just a little, enough to be noticeable. "The one you were headed to," he said finally. Something clicked then, not panic, recognition. This wasn't a place you accidentally visited. It was a place you arrived at when the building decided you were ready. I walked toward the doors. My footsteps sounded muted, like the floor was absorbing them. As I reached for the handle, the guard cleared his throat. "You can leave," he said, "but you won't remember how." I froze. Behind me, the elevator chimed. Soft, friendly. I turned around. The interior was different again, wider, deeper. The mirrored walls now showed reflections that didn't match my movements. In one, I was older. In another, thinner. In another, I wasn't there at all. A directory panel lit up on the side wall. Instead of floor numbers, it displayed names. Some I recognized, employees, tenants, people who had left the company over the years. Others I recognized too, but couldn't place where from. Faces from old cases, missing persons, names that had never been resolved. Next to several names was a small illuminated dot. next to mine. The dot blinked. The guard spoke again, his voice gentler now. "Everyone who stays long enough gets listed," he said. "It makes things easier." "Easier for who?" I asked. "For the building," he replied. I backed away from the elevator. The fog outside the glass doors began to move. Slowly, deliberately, like it was responding to the conversation. Shapes formed within it, vague outlines of people standing just beyond the glass, close enough that I could almost make out their faces. Almost. The clock behind the desk clicked forward. 4:18. I felt it then. The pressure, subtle but undeniable. The same pull I'd felt with the case file. The need to understand, to stay, to figure it out completely. That was the trap. The elevator chimed again, inviting. I looked at the guard one last time. "How long have you been here?" I asked. He smiled wider this time. "I was just going up to my floor," he said. The doors opened, and then they didn't. The lights flickered. The elevator doors began to close. I ran, not toward the elevator, toward the glass doors. My hand passed through the fog like it was cold water, and for a split second, the lobby vanished. The building groaned, deep, structural, like a living thing realizing it was losing its grip. Something screamed behind me. Metal shrieked. The elevator slammed shut. I stumbled forward and burst out into the night air, collapsing onto wet concrete as city sounds rushed back all at once. Traffic, wind, distant sirens, real noise. I rolled onto my back, gasping. Behind me, the building stood quiet and normal, its lobby brightly lit, security desk empty. The clock inside read 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before midnight. I staggered away before the doors could open again, because now I knew the truth. The elevator doesn't take you to floors that don't exist. It takes you to the version of the building that remembers everyone who never left. And it was still deciding whether I counted. I tried to convince myself it was over. That's the lie everyone tells themselves after something breaks their understanding of how the world is supposed to work. You don't say it out loud. You just start behaving like it's true. You avoid the subject. You avoid the place. You avoid anything that reminds you of how close you came to stepping somewhere you weren't meant to exist. For a while it worked. Days passed, then weeks. The city settled back into its rhythm. I stopped flinching when I heard elevator chimes. I stopped checking reflections as often. The outline behind me faded into something I could blame on stress, exhaustion, imagination. But the building didn't forget. It never does. The first sign was paperwork. A routine background check I ran for an unrelated case flagged a familiar address. Same building, same floors, same missing gap between 14 and 15. Except this time, the tenant list was longer. Not with new names, with corrected ones. People I knew had left the company years ago were listed as currently active. No resignation dates, no exit records. Just continuous employment stretching back uninterrupted, like they'd never stepped outside. I went back again. I shouldn't have. I knew that. But curiosity isn't what pulled me there. It was recognition. The lobby felt different this time. Brighter, cleaner, almost welcoming. The kind of space that makes you trust it without realizing why. People moved through it confidently, laughing, talking, checking their phones. Normal behavior. Too normal. I stood near the elevator bank and watched. Out of every group, one person would always be left behind. Not intentionally. Conversations drifted. Someone checked a message. Someone lagged a step behind. And in that brief moment of isolation, the elevator doors would open again. Even if they'd just closed, inviting, most didn't notice. They stepped inside automatically, like muscle memory had taken over. The doors closed. The elevator moved. And when it returned, the group was smaller. No alarm, no reaction. No one seemed to remember there had ever been one more person. I followed one of them, a woman in her early 30s, badge clipped to her jacket, coffee still warm in her hand. She rode alone to what should have been the 12th floor. I waited, counted the seconds. The elevator didn't return. 5 minutes later, it chimed. The doors opened. She stepped out, smiling faintly, like someone waking from a pleasant dream. She walked past me without recognition. I said her name. She stopped, turned, and looked at me with complete confusion. "I'm sorry," she said. "Do I know you?" Her badge no longer had a name on it, just a number. That night, the dreams came back, but sharper, more detailed. I wasn't riding the elevator anymore. I was standing inside it, holding the directory panel open like a book. I could flip through floors the way you flip through pages. Each one showed a space that existed only when the doors opened. Some floors were offices, some were hallways, some were just rooms filled with desks, facing walls. And every floor had people, not trapped, not screaming, working, waiting, remembering just enough to know they were busy. I woke up with the sound of a chime still echoing in my ears. The final message came a week later. No envelope this time, no photograph, just a voicemail, recorded from inside an elevator. I could hear breathing, calm, familiar. Then my own voice, not recorded, not distorted, just future. "I found it," the voice said. "The floor where it makes sense. You'll like it here. There's no pressure, no questions, no leaving." The doors chimed softly. The message ended. I deleted it, changed my number, moved apartments, altered my routines until my days barely resembled each other. But elevators are everywhere. Hospitals, parking garages, hotels, offices. You can't remove them from your life without disappearing completely. And sometimes when I'm alone inside one, just for a second, the panel flickers. The space between the numbers widens, like it's making room. If you ever notice your elevator taking longer than usual, if the display hesitates, if the doors open and the hallway feels quieter than it should, don't hesitate. Don't explore. Don't assume someone made a mistake. Because buildings don't invent floors. They keep them. And once an elevator learns how to stop for you, it starts planning where you'll stay.